Your feet will never take you where your mind has never been.
Do you know the Mike Tyson story?
When I heard this for the first time, it just shook me to my core.
Absolutely no exceptions. You have a tattoo, that's what I think of you.
I almost don't even want to give this person clout because, to be frank, I thought their video was pathetic. But I do want to share it with you guys because I do have a rebuttal to some of the things he said. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 144 on the Pranzata podcast on YouTube. Since today is indeed a solo episode, I figured a fun way to do today's episode would be to actually share some clips of content I viewed throughout the week. I am a huge podcast listener and I'm listening to so many different things that I always wish I had a person to share it with. So I figured why not use this opportunity on this solo episode to share those clips with you guys. Before we get into it, if you like what you hear today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to be a full-time podcaster. It is a huge dream of mine, and every single subscriber helps me get closer to reaching my dream. Also, don't forget to comment on anything I talk about on this episode. The comments help big time with the algorithm. And not only that, but I want this to be a community podcast. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I do listen and I read the comments, and I like to respond as much as possible. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So this first clip I want to show you guys today is from this new podcast, not a new podcast. I think it's been around for a couple years yet, but new to me. I recently discovered it. The name of the podcast is called Women of Impact. And the host of the podcast is Lisa Bilyeu. I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, but I discovered her from Tom Bilyeu, which is one of my favorite podcasters that I've known about for years. And Tom Bilyeu, I really like him because he's in the center politically. And I feel like I can go to his podcast for really trustworthy information that isn't biased towards either the left or the right. And I feel like he genuinely does an amazing job at trying to be fair. He really obviously cares about what he does, and he puts forth his best work to make sure that his content is actually fair and non-biased. As a result of listening to his podcast so much, the algorithm on YouTube sent me his wife's podcast, which is called Women of Impact. Now, at first, when I heard the name Women of Impact, I kind of went in with a closed mind thinking it was going to be this hyper feminist podcast. And as you guys know, since I am in the center politically, I don't subscribe with the title of being a feminist because I feel like that is typically, you hear a lot of feminists are very hard left leaning. So because of that, I had a lot of criticism for the feminist, not the feminist movement historically, but the modern day feminist movement and what they represent. With that being said, when I first heard the title of the podcast, Women of Impact, I was a little closed off to giving it a chance, but I did give it a chance. And to my surprise, not only did I like the podcast, but it actually has become one of my favorite podcasts. And dare I say, I'm actually listening to this podcast more than any podcast right now. I'm really going in on these episodes. And I wanted to share a clip with you guys with one of the guests that she interviewed named Cindy Trim. Cindy Trim is a badass lady. She is an inspirational speaker and an entrepreneur. This particular clip that I want to share with you guys is her talking about manifestation. The reason I chose this clip is because I am a huge believer in manifestation. It's something that I put work into and I've seen the fruits of happen in my own life. And whenever I talk about manifestation on my podcast, I feel like I can never quite get the words out. Her description of manifestation was the best I may have ever heard in my entire life. So I wanted to share it with you guys because now I can give you guys the words that I couldn't come up with myself. But the message is the message I've been wanting to share with you guys. So let's give this a listen.
But what if you can harness the incredible power of thought? What if you could do that? If you want to know what you've been thinking about your life, look at what's manifesting. Do not curse or resent or reject what has already manifested. Go back up and say, this is what I want. This is the image that I see. How do you see your life unfolding? Because how you see it unfolding will unfold. And what's not there for you will never be here for you. Your feet will never take you where your mind has never been. So the hardest work in life is not.
I just have to pause right there. Your feet will never take you where your mind has never been. That is so fucking good. Okay, let's keep going because there's a little bit more I want to show you guys.
Changing anything out here is to change your mind. And any time you decide that you're going to change your mind is when you'll change your life. This is whether it's in an abusive relationship. This is whether it's an addiction. This is whether it's poverty. Don't try to do things out here. It will always evade you. People will always change. People will always do this. You know, the economy will always do this. Government will always do that. All of that is out of your control.
I want to quickly say something about that too. I remember after the results of this election, a lot of people were freaking out about the future of the United States. That's another thing to keep in mind too, is that no matter what circumstance we're in, there will always be elements of those circumstances out of your control. The only thing you really have power over in those circumstances is what's in your mind. But anyways, let's continue.
Because you'll still be playing supporting actress. But when you decide I'm going to be the lead actress in the unfolding of my life, it starts right here, the thoughts. And that's the hardest thing to change. But the moment you do, everything about your life will line up.
That literally, I didn't know if I should just stay silent or cheer. Your feet will never go where your mind doesn't. Holy smokes. That really hit me. People need to write that quote and put it on their mirror on a post-it and just read it every day.
Exactly what I'm saying. That quote really hit me too when I heard it. I had to play that little extra for you guys to see her reaction because I felt the exact same way when I heard her say that quote. It's absolutely incredible how much your mind really truly does shape your reality. And I'm going to share a little short story with you guys about something that happened recently to me that demonstrates this. And this one is actually more of a negative situation where I was having negative thoughts and my negative thoughts actually manifested a negative reality. So I'm currently living in Philadelphia. My family that I visit sometimes, they live in closer to North Jersey. It's Central Jersey technically, but there's like if you're not from New Jersey, people are like, there's no such thing. So if we're going to play that game, let's just call it North Jersey. Now, I grew up in that area where I go visit my family in Central North Jersey. And when I go visit, sometimes there's certain people that from my childhood that I don't really want to run into. Friends that I had a friendship breakup with, ex-boyfriends. I was an awkward kid in high school, so I don't necessarily want to see people from high school, that sort of thing. So my little brother, he asked me to go out for coffee with him when I went to go visit my family. Now, my brother lives in an area of a girl that I really don't want to see. And I had this anxiety in my head that I really don't want to see this girl right now. We had a very horrible friendship breakup. And right now in my life, when I went to go visit this particular time, I was going through a really hard time. And I don't know, I'm a human being and there's this egotistical part of me that doesn't want to be seen when I'm in a low place. You know what I mean? I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. Like when you're going through some tragic situation and you're out grocery shopping in your pajamas because you don't really have the wherewithal to take care of yourself. Those aren't the times you want to run into people. So I said to my brother, I would love to go out for coffee with you, but can we please go out of the way to drive to a different town just in case the off chance I run into this person because I really don't want to see them. I had this weird anxiety that I was going to see them and they were going to see me in my low state. He said fine, and we drove several towns away to make sure not to run into her, and guess who was there? You guys already know where this story was going. She was at the place that I went out of my way to drive to intentionally not run into her, and she was there. And that's just a small story, a short story of how powerful the mind is. When I really think back to that situation, I have zero doubts in my mind that my own anxiety of running into her was the thing that had me run into her. Or another possibility, because the mind is so powerful, that I had some type of intuitive sense that I would run into her. Either way, I really feel like there's a lot that goes on in the mind that science hasn't figured out. And the only evidence I can really go by are these really odd life circumstances and stories. I have a lot of stories like that, but that's just one to share. But I have countless stories like that. And I know so many other people who do, by the way. But anyways, so that's her clip on manifestation. I really wanted to share that with you guys. So moving on to the next clip. Now, this clip is from a podcast called Impact Theory. It is from the man that I mentioned earlier, who is Tom Bilyeu. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. I feel like I should know it by now because I've been listening to his podcast for a while now. But nevertheless, this is Impact Theory by Tom Bilyeu. As I said before, Tom Bilyeu is the husband of Lisa Bilyeu, the creator of the podcast from the clip that I just showed you guys. Now, I find this clip I selected very interesting because I'm about to show you him describing the nature of the marriage between him and his wife. And I believe him and his wife are both in the podcast together, so you could see them together. And I was telling you guys earlier, Tom Bilyeu is in the center politically. He did vote for Donald Trump, and he has his reasons for it, which you guys could research on your own. But interestingly enough, his wife is a feminist and she did not vote for Donald Trump. However, they have a beautiful marriage and they accept each other's differences. Now, I wanted to show this with you guys because I think this is important to see because I feel like as a country, we are so divided right now. And I think this is a beautiful example of if this can work in a marriage, then it should be able to work in families and friendships and even acquaintances in your life. So let's take a look at this.
Can I read a comment?
Yes.
Thank you. This is from Skurbadurba. Wow.
Wow. Oh, is this Skurbadurba?
Scurby
There we go. Okay. Tom,
We know
you got to.
Skurbadurba well.
Oh, we do. Okay, Skurbadurba. Tom, you got to read your wife's room. She mad you voted for him, and you got to emphasize one of the reasons she's mad. SMH. What's that stand?
Shaking my head.
Shaking my head.
Oh,
yeah.
shaking my head. Thank you. None of my business. Love you guys. So
All right,
here's the
since
thing.
you're here,
Yeah.
am I misreading the room?
I'm not mad that you voted for Trump because I think you're an individual with your own mindset. And so you have the right to vote for anyone you want. We've spoken about it endlessly based on my comment that I just made of one of the reasons I don't like Trump. As a woman, I just don't think that's okay. But we've spoken about that. And so interesting, we've had a lot of backlash where it's like, how can you be married to someone who has voted for Trump when you're a woman? And we've spoken about that. And to me, that's one part of him. But is he going to do well for the country? Is he going to do well for your everyday person? That's ultimately the thing that I really care about and focus on. And so in talking to you through the policies, through all the things that we're talking about and that you guys talk about on the show, it really allows me to understand why. Now, being part of a marriage doesn't mean that we always agree. And I think that people think that you have to always agree in order to have a successful relationship. So anyway, just wanted to kind of say that.
Yeah, facts. I'm not even sure it's Skurbadurba. Are you saying that I can only vote for people that my wife approves of? That would be crazy. Just as I would not expect my wife to vote just because I think something. She should vote if she could, but she can't.
Oh, they apologize. I misread and overstepped. No, not at all. I think that if that was the impression, then I'm glad that you asked the question. So thank you, Skurbadurba.
Also, Skurbadurba, chats are like hot take factories. So we're all for it. You can have hot takes.
I think that's I was watching a little bit because I was enjoying their banter, but I think that's pretty much the gist of it there. But yeah, I wanted to show that to you guys because I thought they had a really beautiful exchange right there. And I like how much they respect each other's political ideas. And they understand that that's only a tiny percentage of, well, more than a tiny percentage, but it's only a fraction of the entire person. There is absolutely no way to determine somebody's character based on who they voted for. I've met liberal people who have stolen from people and scammed people, and I've met conservative people who have cheated on their husbands and wives. So, and all those are very complex topics in themselves. I'm not even saying that automatically makes them good or bad people. What I'm trying to say is that who somebody voted for, it's a lot more complex. You can't judge somebody's character based on who they voted for. Deciding who to vote for and who to support politically, especially when there's only two choices to select from, essentially, is a very multifaceted thing. And there's really no sure, secure answer, no matter where you go. So with that being said, I think we do need to start respecting each other's intellectual freedom more and not be so harsh towards the people in our lives that we love, our family, our friends, our neighbors. Obviously, it's a personal choice if you're willing to date or get married to somebody with such different beliefs with you politically. But I can speak from personal experience. My last relationship that I was in, while that relationship didn't work out for several reasons, there were good parts of that relationship that made it really difficult to leave that relationship despite some of the bad things that were happening in that relationship. And one of the best things in that relationship was the freedom that I felt like I had when I was with this person. I really felt free to be an individual in this relationship. And one of the ways in which that played out was intellectually. My ex-boyfriend never judged me for my opinions and my point of view. And we disagreed on a lot of things. There were some things we agreed on politically, but for the most part, we had a lot of differences politically, and we always talked about them civilly with each other. And that was honestly one of the best parts of our relationship. It's funny thinking back, there were some things in that relationship that obviously led to an end, but man, were there some really great things in that relationship that really spoiled me. I talked about it on my last episode about how my ex-boyfriend was not a jealous person. He really let me express myself. He let me do my podcast. He let me, interact with other males on my podcast, dress how I want to dress, think how I want to think. He was amazing in those ways. So despite some of the issues that we had, which were pretty daunting, some of the issues, that was a part of a relationship that made it really difficult, to walk away from. But, all that to say that I really respect the intellectual respect that this couple has for each other, this married couple, Lisa and Tom Bilyeu, and how fucking badass they are to both have their own really thriving podcast separately of each other and then working together on these podcasts and being individuals and together at the same time. You know what I mean? So it's really a beautiful thing to see. And yeah, I wanted to share that with you guys. Okay, on to the next clip. This next clip is from a Joe Rogan episode. Joe Rogan has talked about his knowledge of Mike Tyson several times, and I've heard him talk about it several times. And for years, I've been trying so hard to find the footage of him talking about Mike Tyson, but he just recently described it again with a recent guest. So I don't even want to explain much of it. I'm just going to show you guys the clip, but he talks about the history of Mike Tyson. And when I heard this for the first time, and when I heard Joe Rogan talk about it years ago, it just shook me to my core, hearing the story of Mike Tyson. So I'm going to share this with you guys. Here we go.
Do you know the Mike Tyson story?
No.
So Mike Tyson, when he was 13, Mike Tyson had a terrible childhood, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. It was just like horrible neighborhood crime and, in and out of detention centers. He gets adopted when he's 13 by this guy, Customato, who's one of the greatest trainers of all time, but also a hypnotist. So Customato starts hypnotizing Mike Tyson when he's 13 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
And when he talks to him about fighting, he's like, you don't exist, only the task. So all of the things like, what? Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm this. Maybe I'm that. Maybe I'm a fraud. Maybe you don't exist. It's only the task.
He carries on, but that's the gist of what I wanted to show with you guys is that he talks about how, you guys just heard it, but to reiterate, Mike Tyson grew up in a very poor neighborhood and he was adopted by a man who happened to be a hypnotist and also a boxing coach. And he hypnotized Mike Tyson to become one of the best boxers of all time by telling him, you don't exist, only the task exists. When I first heard that story, that kind of, it gave me the chills in a way, because I had a lot of mental health struggles in my youth and to this day, to a degree, but I'm doing much better now. But one thing that got me through my mental health issues that I had in my 20s in particularly was a special kind of therapy called EMDR. I know the EM portion of EMDR stands for eye motion, because during the therapy, they have you move your eyes left to right while they're asking you a series of questions, which has something to do with bilateral movement. And if you do this motion of moving your eyes from left to right, that bilateral movement is supposed to help you open up and access certain parts of your brain that is supposed to access old memories. And I think there's other forms of doing this where if some people are uncomfortable moving their eyes from left to right, they can hold two little, they're called buzzies. They vibrate and they vibrate left and they vibrate right. I think I personally did the vibration ones because the eyes thing was uncomfortable. But apparently it's the same concept, the bilateral movement. So during this series of questions that they were asking me, it's kind of like, you ever have a child keep asking, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? And then finally you get to a point where you don't have an answer. Like, why are you drinking this glass of water? Because I'm thirsty. Why are you thirsty? Because I ate some food. Why did you eat some food? Because I need to survive. Why do you need to survive? And then you go down the line of questioning until you get to a point where it eventually gets to, I don't know, God, and you can't answer the question. That's kind of what happens in EMDR. The goal is to keep asking questions to try to get to the root cause of your pain and your suffering. So for example, they might say, why were you angry today? And then you might say, because this. Why this? Oh, I guess because it reminds me of my mother. Well, what about your mother? And you get the point. You get the line of questioning. But when they were doing the EMDR with me, I kept reaching the same point where towards the end of the questioning, I kept saying, I don't matter. I don't matter. And that was the point where I couldn't go any further. I don't matter. I don't matter. And I remember the therapist being kind of stuck and she didn't know what to do with it because on one hand, I don't matter can sound like a negative thing, but it felt so true to me at the time. I was like, but I don't matter, And when I heard this, I was like, oh shit, we really don't matter. It's not a negative thing. There is something else that as human beings that we are supposed to transcend to. And that's what really matters. And I'm really getting the chills talking about this, but his hypnotist / boxing coach / I guess father, right? Really tapped into this with Mike Tyson, and he put this in his head at a very young age. And what this caused to lead him to was one of the greatest boxers of all time. It's just really insane what it is to be a human being and to want to conquer these great tasks. If you look at the literature that human beings have created throughout centuries and centuries and how this literature has come in some form in all these different cultures, stories about gods, Greek mythology, the Bible, etc. At the core of it, we want to become something great. And so it comes to no surprise that so many human beings on this earth want to pursue something great because I think it's in our nature to want to get something, to pursue something. And I find that holding on to that idea that I don't matter actually really helps me a lot in my life. So if I can give a more concrete example of how I apply it in my life. For example, when I'm performing music live, let's say, there's always going to be this human egotistical side of me. And by the way, the ego isn't a bad thing all the time necessarily either. We need the ego to survive. But in certain circumstances where I want to put on a beautiful performance, when I have those thoughts, am I making any weird faces? Am I making any mistakes? Do I look fat in this dress? How is my posture? Do I look slumped over and disgusting? When I'm having all those egotistical human thoughts, what helps me is to remember I don't actually matter. The only thing that matters is the music. And this is going to sound very woo-woo, but I really mean it. The only thing that matters is that my body in this moment is a vessel for the spirit of God or something else. You know what I mean? And I really take this to heart when I perform classical music, especially because I know those composers were the vessel of some great force to be able to create this amazing music. And as a human being who performs music well after these composers have died, I feel like it's my job to continue being that vessel for this spirit, which is this glorious music. So I don't know. The Joe Rogan podcast gets a lot of criticism for being political and whatnot, but I've been listening to this podcast for years, and it's stuff like this that is the real reason I listen to this podcast, because of all the beautiful stories that I hear from this podcast that really inspire me. And I feel like I need to start sharing more of these parts of the Joe Rogan podcast with you guys. So, there's this impression that it's all political, and it's not. There's so much more that goes on. Okay, I have one more clip to share with you guys today. This is a bit of a shorter podcast. I'm recovering a mild cold right now, so I don't want to overdo it with my voice. I need to save my voice for teaching and singing and whatnot, and my next podcast next week. So this next clip actually isn't something I admire. It's something I want to roast with you guys. So a couple months back, a while back now, I feel like in the summer, so it's been at least 6 months at this point, if not 7 or 8, I did a podcast with a friend where I was responding to negative hate comments that I got. And it was crazy the amount of hate comments I got on my tattoo, which I think is a very beautiful tattoo, sleeve of tattoos. And it got me really curious. Why do some people have such a negative impression of tattoos? So I figured, let me look on YouTube and see if somebody out there made a video on why they hate tattoos. So I almost don't even want to give this person clout, because to be frank, I thought their video was pathetic, but I do want to share it with you guys because I do have a rebuttal to some of the things he said. So the name of this podcast is CRP Archive, which I guess stands for Coach Red Pill. Okay, here we go. By the way, before I get into it, does anybody know what red pill actually means? Well, we can look it up actually. So red pilled means to cause somebody to have their perspective dramatically transformed, especially by introducing them to a new and typically disturbing understanding of the true nature of a particular situation. Okay. So this guy thinks he's going to red pill us into understanding the truth about people with tattoos. So let's see what he has to say.
Tattoos are a sign. They are a sign of one of two things, or perhaps both. Either the guy who has a tattoo is an idiot.
Okay, I need to pause right there. The guy who has a tattoo is an idiot. I want to stop by saying right there that there are so many examples today of successful, brilliant, straight up geniuses, creative people with tattoos. To name a few, well, Joe Rogan, which we just saw a couple clips before in this podcast episode, 2 full sleeves of tattoos, one of the most successful men on the planet today. Andrew Huberman, full sleeve of tattoos as well. One of the most brilliant neuroscientists today, and one of the most inspirational neuroscientists today, with an incredible podcast that has helped me so much. And if we're going to name some female examples, Amy Winehouse, she had full sleeves of tattoos as well. She was a brilliant genius vocalist. And remember, intelligence isn't always about computations. Creative intelligence is also a type of intelligence. And she was an absolute musical genius. Well, me, of course. I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but I'm also not kidding, because I have 2 degrees. I had straight A's in college. I can speak Spanish and English. I can play classical piano. I'm obviously not a fucking idiot. I'm not saying I'm a brilliant genius like all the other people I named, but I'm not a fucking idiot. So immediately discredits this guy's statement that if somebody has a tattoo that they're not intelligent. But let's go on.
Or he's an NPC. Or he's an NPC who is an idiot at the same time. One of those 3 combinations. Yeah, absolutely. No exceptions. You have a tattoo, that's what I think of you. Sorry, pal. Yeah, because why exactly are you...
He's really showing me the truth with his red pill, and he's got a red shirt on.
Having a tattoo? I mean, what exactly are you trying to express by having a tattoo? What is the point here? Huh? I mean, please explain it to me. See, it's one thing...
Sometimes there is a point. You know what? Every human being has the desire to express themselves and to be perceived in a certain way. For example, you chose to wear a red shirt in this episode today to express and show the world that you are a red pill guy and you know the truth. You want to red pill people and show them how brilliant your observations are and enlighten them to the truth. You went out of your way to choose an outfit to express that. And by the way, all the power to you. There's really nothing wrong with that. I'm not hating on it. What I'm trying to say is that I think there's power in owning that about yourself. So if I'm going to look at I can't speak for every single person who has a tattoo, but I can speak for myself and why I chose to have a tattoo. Because they look badass as fuck. That's why. And I guess if I'm going to break it down like that, I want to be perceived as somebody who's badass as fuck. Is there anything really wrong with that? You want to be perceived as wise. Is it wrong that I want to be perceived as badass or sexy or anything like that? I'm throwing around this theory in my head lately that isn't exactly my theory. I'm just kind of elaborating on it from what I've learned from Carl Jung. So Carl Jung, I've learned from Jordan Peterson, and Carl Jung talks about owning your shadow self. And I think there's nothing more sexy and authentic than looking at the dark parts of yourself as a human being and fucking owning them. Hey, I'm a human being and I care what people think about me, and I do want to be perceived as something. And I got this tattoo because I thought it was sexy and I wanted to be perceived as sexy, and I thought it was badass and I wanted to be perceived as badass. Is there anything fucking wrong with that? And does it really have to mean anything other than that? We could get in depth with it if we want to. It could be because as a human being, I want to have an identity because it has to do with survival and mating and attraction. We could get into it, but at the end of the day, I'm not ashamed of that part of myself. I own those parts of myself. It sounds like what you're actually doing is called projecting, because you're not owning those parts of yourself, and you're angry at other people who want to project an image of themselves because you're not comfortable with the fact that you want to project an image of yourself. But anyways, let's go.
If you're like a soldier or like a sailor, you're a sailor who went down in some ship, some tragedy, what happens in war or whatever, or you were with in some platoon rather, in some war, right? And you get like a tattoo, of camaraderie or something like that. Well, you're 19, you're an idiot, okay, fine. Yeah, but you're a grown-ass man, and you decide to get all kinds of tattoos that have no meaning whatsoever. I mean, at least the sailor who went down with the ship and
Tattoos don't have to have a meaning. They don't have to. A lot of people ask me, what does your lady mean? Like, what does your snake mean? It doesn't mean anything, and that's okay. It just means I thought it was gorgeous and I wanted to put it on my body. Beauty doesn't always need to have meaning. And I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm beautiful. I meant I chose this tattoo artist because I thought she had beautiful work. I mean, I think, look at that. That's gorgeous. So beauty doesn't always need to have any special meaning. I don't look at a flower and say, what does it mean? You just know what it means. You feel it. I chose things on my tattoo that are kind of meaningless in that way, that they are just beautiful to look at. A gorgeous lady, timeless. Flowers, timeless. Snakes, timeless. They can be recycled through all cultures, and they could mean things. I could pretend to have a meaning. I could be like, oh, the snake is there because I'm shedding my extra layers of skin to evolve into a new person. Sure, I can make meaning, but I think that's one of the beautiful things about timeless, quote unquote, meaningless things is that they can mean different things at different times, but at the end of the day, they don't have to mean anything. It could just mean that it's your style and it's beautiful and it's sexy. That's all it has to mean. It doesn't have to mean anything deeper than that.
and survived. He put, USS, sunken ship on his shoulder, and it means something because it was something really monumental in his life. But, you went and you got yourself, I don't know, a Maori or whatever it's called, tattoo, like on your chest, and, you're the whitest guy since sliced bread. Yeah? You've never been to Samoa or wherever it is that they have those tattoos, and you got it because you thought it'd look cool? That's why you got it?
I have to pause right there and just point out that this man has 53.3 thousand followers on his YouTube channel. That means 53,000 people, or 53.3 thousand people to be precise, thinks this guy is brilliant. Let's carry on.
There are lots of things I thought were cool when I was 19. Lots of things I thought were cool when I was 29 and even 39. I'm 51, and I think back on the stuff that I thought was cool back when I was 39, let alone 29, let alone when I was 19. And it's just stupid, yeah? It's stupid, and that's the thing. See, a tattoo is forever. It's permanent.
No, it's not permanent. You know why? Because I'm going to die and rot in the ground and my flesh will be gone. No, it's not permanent. You're a very closed-minded idiot.
Yeah? And you want to get rid of it, it's going to be incredibly expensive and painful, and quite likely they will not be able to remove it in its entirety.
That I'll give him credit for. He's not wrong about that. If you do pick a tattoo, you don't want to pick something that you're going to hate. It's not permanently, because we're going to die and not be here. Nothing's fucking permanent. But in your life here, if it's not something you think you're going to enjoy for your life, actually contrary to what he said before, that if a 19-year-old gets a tattoo, he kind of lets it pass because he's a young idiot, but that somebody in their 20s or 30s shouldn't get a tattoo, or 40s, because by that point they should know better. I actually think it's the opposite. I think you should wait till your 30s to get a tattoo, because by then you know yourself and you have a better idea of what you might like for the rest of your life. So I'll actually give him credit on this one, that if you're going to get a tattoo, make sure it's something that you don't want to get removed later. But carry on.
Tattoos are forever. Are you absolutely positively sure that the thing that you think is cool now that you're, say, 25, 30, 35, you think that you're going to find it cool, in 10 years?
Yeah. Like I said, hot ladies will always be cool. Flowers will always be cool. Snakes will always be cool to me. That's why I chose my tattoos when I was in my 30s, so I can make sure I picked things that I would always find cool. Hot ladies will never go out of style. All right. Carry on.
In 5 years, do you think you're going to find it cool next year, for crying out loud? Think! Of course not. Of course not. Because we evolve, we grow. Unless the tattoo actually has some significance. It's just goddamn decoration, for crying out loud. Decoration, it's like tattooing your clothes on, for crying out loud. Clothes are fashion, yeah? You buy clothes, 1 year for one season, the spring, the summer, winter.
I can't even listen to this guy anymore, because he's not really saying anything of substance anymore. And I don't even want to give this guy more attention than he deserves. I just can't believe that this idiot has 53,000 subscribers. With that being said, will you people subscribe to my channel, please? Because I definitely deserve more subscribers than this guy. So let's get us there. But to recap everything I said, I think this guy is being very close-minded to judge somebody's character for having tattoos. Like I said earlier in the clip, I can name so many brilliant people, successful people with tattoos, and I don't judge them for it whatsoever. And I think to a degree, he's projecting something psychologically. He seems very passionate and angry about people with tattoos. Why does he care so much? And like I said earlier before, it sounds to me like he's projecting a part of himself. He knows he's a person who also wants attention. People get tattoos because they want people to see them. Why else would people get tattoos? He also wants to be seen. And when he looks at people with tattoos, it's an outward expression of what he feels too. He just isn't comfortable owning that part of himself. And that's why he's angry about the people who do own that part of themselves. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. This is Pranzata Podcast, episode 144, a solo episode. I really enjoyed doing this episode, actually. When I do solo podcasts, I think I want to do this more often, where I just jump on here and share with you guys clips I've seen throughout the week. It's a lot more fun for me than just sitting and talking straight for an hour without like any drink breaks or breathing breaks or anything like that. It's, in a weird way, it almost feels like I have a guest, because I'm interacting with the content, and then I'm also sharing a part of my life with you guys, because I'm a podcast junkie. I listen to podcasts all week long. I'm a YouTube junkie. I go crazy. I comment. I read comments. I'm a psycho. So it's fun for me to share this with you guys. Guys, before you leave, please comment on something I talked about on this episode. Anything you want, whether it's the tattoo guy, the Joe Rogan clip, etc. Whatever you guys want to talk about in the comment section. I do read them. I do reply as much as I possibly could. Again, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my dream to be a full-time podcaster, and every single subscriber helps me get closer to reaching my dream and making that a reality for me. And also, I do have a link to my Instagram below if you guys want to follow me on Instagram. I'm only active on YouTube and Instagram. The other ones are too much for me, the Facebook, TikTok, all that. It's too much to keep up with, but I'm very active on both of those. And those are, my content homes, you could say. And that's it. Pranzata Podcast, episode 144. Have a good day, guys. Bye.